Hello and welcome to the Discourse KE. My name is Chenyenyozi and I am your host. Thank you for coming. Thank you for being here. Well, I have a guest in studio. He's my friend. I like to say he's my friend. He is an artist. His name is Monaja. Yes, he prefers to be called Monaja. Okay, I call him Monaja, so I will let him introduce himself.
Sasa ushaniintroduce nini sasa? Sema I'm called Monaja sasa dinivyo.
Okay, sawa.
Tuendelee sasa.
It's called Monaja. That's it. Yeah. So, Monaja is here to talk about politics, more so elections. Yes, za Kenya. Yes. So now, kidogo pia Monaja is a source of history knowledge. Anyway, so
alafu mtu yake kwa comments YouTube aseme nimesema kitu mbaya, something wrong.
Oh, they'll hack you alone, it's fine.
Where?
They'll come hack you.
That's my credibility on the line.
Monaja, tell me, how do Kenyans vote? How have we been voting since we got our independence?
So yeah, so it's different times, different reasons, different dynamics. Independence years, those were heady years of independence when everyone is excited. Most of us, most of those who came before me, si ati nilikuwa nimezaliwa hizo. Mimi si mzee hivyo.
Okay.
Yeah, so
if you say so.
Sawa tu. So those early years, those early 60s, most of the time utapata yani people were being voted as a result of the contributions to the struggle for independence, for flag independence. And so those people who had some sort of credentials, some freedom fighter credentials, those people who came from that tradition of agitating for either constitutional reform towards independence or more radical in their way of pursuing change, would be voted in. So that would influence people to vote. So and so is my hero. 1963, 1961. Then that changes. 69 becomes now a question because now you've moved from independence and so much has happened. At this point, KPU, there's a little general election of 1966. Where those elements who decamped from KANU, who felt that the establishment of the day wasn't doing much for the people, wasn't doing much for the landless, and so on and so forth, were now forced to now seek to vote to go back kwenye debe sasa. Sasa wapiganio, if you are a KANU MP and now you're in Kenya People's Union,
urudi and then
wakuvotie. And there was a lot of course there was a lot of intimidation, there was a lot of rigging, so to speak.
Nothing new there.
So it's different times. 69 now it becomes something different. 69 is now you've been in government for 6 years now, because the primaries were in 69 December, and then the actual election was actually January 1970. Like what umetufanyia nini? And people had a hard time getting back to parliament. 1974 likewise. The turnover, actually our turnover in terms of the members of parliament being voted in, now of course we have governors, senators and whatnot, it's pretty high. It was then, and 69, 79 as well, 74. And so there are a number of, if it's 1992, there are those people who are pro, who are against the KANU establishment. Some of them like Paul Mwite had known to agitate for a multi-party system, and it was actually based on his initiative, based on his courage, because it actually took courage to face down the regime of that time. That guy got a lot of goodwill, and he was voted in as a member of parliament in a party that was considered a low party. I mean, it wasn't, I'm saying, because at that time Ford Kenya was Jaramogi's party, and this is someone who was in Kabete and was voted in actually the only Ford Kenya MP from Central Kenya at that time, from Central Province as we know it. So yeah, so different, and then some people vote, sometimes it's voting for the tangible, sometimes you're also voting against a person.
Yeah. I
recall I was interviewing someone in Dagoretti in 2017. I remember they're talking about the then incumbent MP, and they were saying, huyo si alisema ati ni pesa zake zilimchagua, ngoja tutamuonyesha.
Okay.
So in that case, would you say that they were voting for a candidate or they were voting against that?
Definitely against.
So there are so many reasons. I mean, ethnic solidarity. Sometimes you're like, yeah, this person comes from my region. You're like, I'll vote for him, not so much because I believe in him, but ni mtu wangu.
Just because ni mtu. Yeah. And how is this working out for us? How is this voting system? How is democracy working for us? When it comes to voting particularly?
You know, because there's a lot of emphasis on the idea of their vote. You know, it's like an uncle of mine was telling me, like, elections are like exams. Like, sometimes it's not the exam that's the problem, it's the student. Sometimes the person who's setting, sometimes the person who's marking. We know who's marking as far as elections are concerned. So you can say people are voting in a certain way, but when you look at the results, do they really reflect what actually happened? I do not know what to trust. Because maybe of observing, of knowing how power works in Kenya, of knowing that knowing certain people, that having financial resources can get you ahead. There's a writer who was describing it as democracy for the elite, by the elite, and of the elite.
Okay.
So, I mean, let's even break down things, something simple like how the idea of affirmative action works. Maybe 2/3 gender rule, if we break that down. Like, who are the kind of people who get there? Are they just any woman? Or are they a woman from a certain class?
Right.
From a certain class closer to the ruling elite?
So then,
you know, so it's...
Is it perceived? Are we living in a perceived democracy where we think that we have what we actually do not have? Can we actually trust the system with our votes? So when I pick kura yangu, niko sure it counts.
There are times where the stakes are different in different places. Like, if the regime has things like the presidency, I don't know the last time we had someone who we could say, like, reflects the results. Like, this is just a personal view. Like,
right.
Because, I mean, just look, last election, Supreme Court, the other election, 2013, I actually was an observer. Statistically, some of those figures don't make sense, like the number of spoiled votes. We hadn't even reached. It was an unprecedented election. We had never voted for, is it 6 candidates before? We had never. It was just because before it was member of parliament, councillor, maybe president. You know.
This time there's so many people on the
but now this 6. But now we have spoiled votes of 0.85% in 2013. I think it was something like that. Okay. You know, in Europe, think about our literacy. But Western Europe is like, the spoiled votes in their cases are usually range between 1% to maybe 3%.
And that's like an actual mathematical error.
So sasa si tunaenda kuwafanyia civic education. Watulipie ndege wa Kenya from all corners of the country who know how to vote. I mean, I'm not being an Afro-pessimist. I'm just saying, like, when you think through some of these results, sometimes what is said to be the result isn't necessarily accurate, because there's so much that goes through who controls the provincial administration. The same provincial administration is going to give security to these polling centers, polling stations. So maybe back to the question that you're asking about, you had asked about the vote.
If we can trust
that our vote
actually count.
Yeah, so there are certain situations where there's a vested interest where they won't count.
Okay.
But now the question would be, how does this system work? Because representative democracy, you're going to vote for a member of parliament. Your member of parliament is supposed to be accountable to you, the constituents, I mean. But is he more accountable to the constituents than he is to those people who are above him in terms of power? Who is a member of parliament / governor accountable to? Is he or she, are they accountable to the people who voted them in? Or are they accountable to those who have more power? If there are bills that are, because ultimately we live in a capitalist society.
Right.
It's not a coincidence that you have the richest Kenyans being politicians. That's not coincidental, because if it was, if the ideal would be, it should have been businessmen, not politicians. So it means that they have vested interests. And
I suppose that explains why there's a lot of light shown on two people, presidential candidates. One, Raila, who is, it's quite clear, he's a billionaire, and to Ruto, another billionaire. How they have their wealth is another story altogether. But as you're saying, it's more about, okay, so the base is who has the money right now. So now these two people are running for presidency, and we're voting in August. How do you think this will play out in terms of results, in terms of the aftermath after the results? What do you perceive that it will be like?
Bourgeois democracy. Okay, so because ours is just bourgeois democracy. Representative democracy is usually derogatorily referred to as
a bourgeois
because it means that it's there's this guy who's called B.A. Ogot. He was saying, he was analyzing Kenya at the time of the movement towards a multi-party system, the kind of readjusting and the realignments that had taken place. And he was writing and he was saying it more or less is a democracy for the elite, of the elite and by the elite. So consequently, it's not coincidental that those two front runners are
amongst the richest in the country.
Yeah, and they're the richest of all candidates. And they're the ones who are, so how it's usually in a bourgeois democracy, it's the person who has more money, it's the person who has more resources, it's the person who has the backing of the bourgeois and who has the backing of the bourgeois right now.
So that is pretty much what would happen when we hit the elections.
That's what,
So it has been quite bleak talking about the truth.
I mean, it's there are many dynamics. Who knows?
Right.
Someone might drop dead somewhere. Some maybe they're just going to. Who knows?
Who knows what will happen? So what is your azimio lako ni lipi? What is your hope come 2020 as we wrap up, and your final
2020
take? Sorry, come 2022. I should have just said
it's not. I think dealing what we have to, when we say Kenya is a capitalist society, it's not just it's a brand of colonial capitalism.
Okay.
It comes from the colonial times, and I don't really think our problems can be solved in a number of months. Kenya is a market. That's how everything runs. Like, the rationale is profit, and profit goes to a certain group of people.
I feel like saying tuko soko.
Tuko soko. But moving forward, because there's a tendency of Kenyans to dwell on the problem and say, you ask me the solutions, but the problem is what should happen is people need to be educated on the kind of system that they're living in, the kind of institutions that exist in the system that they're living in. It will always work for the elite, almost always. So how do you turn that around? It means that foundation, that base has to be changed. It has to be reworked. It has to now, instead of catering to commercial interests, it should cater to the people. It should be direct. Because what we have is the people, the market, and then it's like the market is more important than the people. So the people have to understand what their problem is, which is being treated like products in a market. And now they have to now take that collective action, which will take so many phases. So if you're an artist, you know what to do. Like, you educate yourself and educate the people around you.
Right.
If you are a writer, you know, do what you have to
Use
do.
the pen as your weapon.
You know, but you have to also go beyond your circle, because there are people who are suffering more than you. We are privileged people.
Right.
Not every Kenyan has this or can sit in front of a camera.
Totally.
At a certain library in town. You know, so we also have to have an awareness of the people who are suffering more than us. And how, for you to solve that problem, you have to put the people who are most severely affected by oppression in our society and address their needs. And so how do you come up with a system that now caters to that type of person, that kind of person?
So basically
organizing. You need to organize. You need to organize. You need to carry out political education. You also need the education. It's not that you have everything that you know. But as an intellectual who maybe has been dealing with ideas, you're privileged to think of a different world, of a more, because you have invested your thoughts, your energies in trying to think creatively, trying to think critically. So you have to work with people beyond your class.
So basically we go back to Ubuntuism, yeah?
Yeah.
Go back to the roots.
Yeah, I mean, it's well, going back, you know, because going back kind of implies that back was always best.
Not quite, not with a clouded view, but in terms of just harnessing the essentials so that we can make a better, quote-unquote, product of our society as it is.
Yeah, you definitely have to borrow. You definitely have to borrow from maybe what was there, but you also have to think through the future. You have to think through what will work for the people and organize and learn from the people, and from there I think that's where the promise lies.
Thank you. What will ring in my head after this is the need to use my knowledge for the better and remember that I am privileged. So you are also privileged because you watched us and also because you have social media. And I am super thankful that you chose to tune in to Discuss. So remember to share, like, and subscribe to Discuss KE across all platforms.
Na yangu pia. Monaja mwenyewe.
Okay, so tell us about your handles zote.
Monaja mwenyewe.
Across all platforms.
Zote.
Okay.
Zote, hata kwa zenye ziko.
Sawa, so we will follow and subscribe and like and share at Monaja mwenyewe. So thank you, and interact with us kwa comments. We really look forward to this. So thank you and goodbye.